The transmission came in broken, faint, buried in static. But the moment the words cracked through the noise, the command room aboard Earth's deep space monitoring station fell into stunned silence. Every screen, every voice, every breath stopped. The message was not a distress call, it was something far worse. The colony on the outer rim New Dresden was gone. Not damaged, not invaded. Gone. Entire cities reduced to ashes. No survivors. The visuals came through next. Flickering, blurry but real. Burning skies, shattered towers, bodies scattered across the dust like forgotten shadows. And then total darkness. The signal died. A planet's last scream vanishing into cold. Endless space. Captain Mara Hale stood at the center of the room, her face like stone as she watched the horror unfold. She didn't speak. The officers around her whispered in shock, hands shaking as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. New Dresden was a peaceful world. No military, no weapons, families, children, workers, and now, nothing. Her jaw tightened, the faintest twitch in her eye, the only sign of emotion. But inside, something ancient began to stir, cold, deep. Fury that rose slowly, without noise, without haste. It was not anger. It was something far worse. It was the feeling of a line being crossed. The next message arrived not from the attackers, but from the Galactic Council. A summons, a call for peace, a request for Earth to send representatives immediately. No explanations, no accountability, only soft words, carefully chosen. The Council said the attack was likely a miscommunication, or perhaps the work of rogue elements. They spoke of stability, of unity, of the greater good. They begged Earth not to retaliate, not to act in anger, to bring war to the fragile peace of the stars. And through every word, Mara could hear the same thing. Lies. The ship carrying Earth's delegation arrived at the Council's great station 3 days later. The hall was filled with representatives from 100 species, all dressed in ceremonial robes, faces grave with carefully practiced concern. The humans walked in silence. No banners, no fanfare, just black formal uniforms and cold, expressionless eyes. Mara Hale led them, her face unreadable, her step steady. She said nothing. As the speeches began, she didn't react as one alien after another stood to speak of peace, of sorrow, of tragedy. But every word was poison. The Council knew who had done it. The Council had allowed it.
Oh.
And now they wanted Earth to kneel, to swallow the ashes of its murdered children and pretend nothing had happened. When it was Earth's turn to speak, Mara did not move. She did not open her mouth. Humans remained seated, eyes locked on the speakers, but utterly silent. And when the final words were spoken, when the last false promise of peace filled the air, Mara stood. She didn't speak. She didn't bow. She turned and walked out, her team following in cold, unbroken unity. The Council chambers fell into stunned silence. Not a single word from Earth. Not a single reply. Just the soft sound of footsteps vanishing into the distance. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than any fleet could move. Humanity had rejected the Council's plea. The Deathworlders, the species so long mocked for their softness, their endless patience, had given no answer, because their answer was already in motion. Deep in Earth's orbit, the black ships stirred as the Deathworlder fleet, built not for conquest but for survival, came to life like sleeping giants roused from ancient slumber. No broadcast accompanied their awakening, no warning. Just the slow, steady hum of engines as the first wave departed into the black. The galaxy watched in frozen horror. No one moved. No one spoke. The other great powers, once so eager to manipulate Earth, now hesitated. The old calculations no longer held, because something had changed. Humans had stopped speaking. They had stopped warning. Species forged in death, and fire stops talking. The only thing that remains is action. The first target was a border outpost, small, heavily armed, known to be the staging ground for the empire that had destroyed New Dresden. No warnings were given, no ultimatums. The Deathworlder ships arrived without sound, without light, without any of the theatrical displays other species loved. In under 90 seconds, the outpost was gone, every weapon, every soldier, every defense erased in cold. Surgical strikes, and then the fleet moved on. The Council, in a panic, sent new messages. They called for talks. They begged for explanations. They offered bribes, promises, apologies. But Earth said nothing. The black ships continued forward, silent, unstoppable, cold in the heart of the human command network. Deep beneath Earth's surface, Mara Hale stood before the holographic map showing the enemy empire's key systems. Her voice when she spoke was soft, almost gentle. "We warned them," she said. "We asked for peace. We were patient, gave them every chance." She turned to her officers, her eyes hollow but steady. "Now we finish it." Across the stars, civilians on alien worlds watched in terror as reports came in alien fleets falling without resistance, defense grids vanishing before they could even lock on. The Deathworlder fleet wasn't fighting for territory. It wasn't taking prisoners. It was moving through the heart of the enemy with one purpose: to erase the threat. Completely and finally. And still, the humans did not speak, because the time, 4 words, was over. The first war had begun, not with a battle, not with a declaration, but with silence and the galaxy. For the first time in its long, violent history, understood what it truly meant to face the species that survived the Deathworld. The black ships of Earth moved like shadows through space, silent, cold, relentless. No music, no banners, no grand speeches, only engines humming softly in the dark and weapons so precise, so terrifying, that entire worlds trembled before the first shot was ever fired. The Deathworlder fleet was awake now. The galaxy, so used to wars fought with politics and hesitation, was paralyzed. Watching a storm they could neither stop nor understand, on the bridge of the eclipse, Captain Mara Hale stood motionless. As the navigation holograms displayed the next target, a fortified stronghold deep within the Empire's territory, known simply as Red Spire Station. This place wasn't just a military base, it was the control hub where the genocidal strike on New Dresden had been planned. The people who had ordered the massacre were hiding there, safe, untouchable. Until now, there were no discussions. Councils, no debates. Humanity had walked out of the galactic talks without a word, because words were worthless now. The message was action. Every ship in the Deathworlder fleet moved with a single shared thought: this ends here. Across the galaxy, fear spread faster than light. The alien empires who had once sneered at Earth's softness now watched in horror. Trade networks collapsed as planets scrambled to declare neutrality. Some species, terrified of being caught in the storm, tried to send messages of support to Earth, but no reply came. The Deathworlders were not listening. They had become something else, something the galaxy had not seen before. As the fleet approached Red Spire Station, alien warships moved to intercept. They came in hundreds sleek. Cruisers, armored carriers, battle stations equipped with weapons older than most civilizations. But against Earth's ships, they might as well have been made of paper. The humans didn't slow. They didn't hesitate. In less than 7 minutes, the first wave of enemy vessels was gone. Vaporized. Some never even got off a shot. Efficiency was breathtaking. Inside Red Spire Station, panic erupted. Commanders shouted into fractured comms. Defense turrets locked onto shadows that vanished before sensors could track them. And then the black ships fired. Not to destroy the station, no? Not yet. Instead, precise kinetic strikes sliced through specific sections. Power grids, weapon, controls, escape pods. The enemy wasn't given the mercy of quick death. They were made helpless, powerless. On board the Eclipse, Mara Hell watched without blinking. "Disable, not destroy," she said quietly. "No unnecessary bloodshed. Only the guilty." Her officers carried out the commands with the same cold calm. The fleet's artificial intelligence identified targets with inhuman precision names. Faces, the very architects of genocide each, one marked for capture or, if necessary, elimination. Minutes later, human strike teams touched down. Clad in matte black armor, faces hidden behind smooth visors, they moved through the burning halls of Red Spire like ghosts. No wasted movements, no words. The enemy soldiers, some still trying to fight, others begging for mercy, were neutralized. In seconds, the ones who had ordered the slaughter of New Dresden were dragged from their command rooms, terrified, screaming. But there was no one left to hear them. The galaxy, watching from afar through leaked transmission feeds, recoiled in shock. Never had a species fought like this. No hesitation, no show of dominance. Just surgical, terrifying precision. Some alien leaders whispered in fear that the Death Worlders were machines in human skin. Others saw the truth, the deeper terror. These were not mindless killers. These were people pushed beyond mercy. People who had given every chance for peace and had finally decided that enough was enough. Back on the Eclipse, as the strike teams exfiltrated, Mara stood silently before the transmission screens. Reports came in. The operation was complete. The architects of the genocide were in custody or dead. Civilians had not been harmed. The station was intact but crippled. She gave the order to withdraw. No victory speech. No celebration. Just cold efficiency. Another step forward. As the Death Worlder fleet moved to the next target, panic spread across the enemy empire. Entire military installations were abandoned without a fight. Some planetary governors transmitted messages of surrender before the humans even arrived. The Empire's leadership, once so arrogant, now cowered in bunkers, knowing that no wall could keep them safe. They understood, far too late, that this was not a conventional war. This was extinctional-level justice, and humanity had no plans to stop. In the Galactic Council's halls, the remaining alien powers gathered in terrified whispers. Some wanted to intervene. Others argued for appeasement. But no one could agree on anything because deep down, they all knew nothing they said would matter, or had already decided. Meanwhile, across human worlds, there was no cheering, no parades. The people of Earth watched the war unfold with heavy hearts, remembering the images of New Dresden, the children, the homes, the lives wiped out without reason. They did not celebrate vengeance, they mourned justice. But they supported it. Every single one of them, because they understood the truth. If the galaxy could do this once, it could do it again, unless they stopped it now. As the black ship sailed deeper into enemy space, Mara Hale closed her eyes, her hands behind her back, the weight of every decision pressing against her bones. She knew what this war was costing. She knew that each step forward carved away pieces of humanity's soul. But she also knew they had no choice. The message was clear. They had begged for peace. Earth had walked away. And now there was only the march, the cold, endless march of justice that would not stop until the threat was erased hardly and completely. The Death Worlder fleet moved through the stars like a silent storm swift, precise, unrelenting. No declarations of war. No demands. No more words. Every target selected was hit without mercy, without delay. Humanity had stopped asking for peace. They had stopped waiting for justice. Now only action remained. The enemy empire, once the most feared power in this part of the galaxy, was unraveling in days, not years. The Empire's admirals, so confident in their fleets and ancient technology, now faced something they had never imagined. An enemy that didn't seek to conquer or control, but simply to end them completely, without hesitation, on board the Eclipse. Captain Mara Hale stood in the center of the bridge, her expression cold, her eyes unblinking as new reports filled the air. The next target had already been chosen. Sarlin Command Nexus, the central hub that controlled a third of the Empire's remaining military forces. Its defenses were legendary. Massive orbital cannons. War fleets stationed across its skies. Every species in the galaxy had once considered Sarlin untouchable. The Death Worlders didn't care. Mara's voice was soft, steady, engage, and the black ships moved. The attack came without warning. No signal, no challenge. The Death Worlders swept in fast stealth systems, engaged firing before the enemy even knew they were under attack. Dozens of orbital platforms lit up in silent. Explosions, shredded in seconds. Empire ships scrambled to respond, but by the time they raised shields, half their fleet was gone. The humans fought with terrifying calm. They didn't rush, they didn't taunt. They moved with mathematical precision. Every shot was calculated. Every strike was surgical. The Empire's proud ships designed over centuries of slow. Galactic wars could not match the cold efficiency of Death Worlder design. It was not about bigger guns or thicker armor. It was about speed, focus, unshakable discipline. In the command chambers of Sarlon, alien officers screamed for reinforcements. Some ordered wild counterattacks. Others froze in terror as their screens turned to static one by one. In less than 15 minutes, the outer defense ring was gone. The once impenetrable fortress was exposed. Then the second wave hit. Human drop teams. Deployed from orbit ghost-like soldiers clad in matte black armor, their movements silent, flawless. They cut through the station's defenders without cruelty, without waste, every shot placed with cold accuracy. There was no hatred in their eyes. Just the steady, terrible focus of warriors who had made a decision and would not be stopped. The civilians on Sarlon were untouched. Not a single non-combatant was harmed. The Death Worlders weren't here for conquest or punishment. They were here for one purpose: to remove the Empire's war machine from existence. And they did, in under 1 hour. Sarlon, the pride of the Empire, was neutralized. Its leadership captured or eliminated. Its defenses silenced forever. And still, Earth issued no statement, no demands, no broadcasts, because they were not interested in negotiations. The galaxy, watching through hidden feeds and whispered reports, trembled. Worlds that had once mocked Earth's weakness now saw the truth. The humans had been patient, too patient. They had given the galaxy every chance to choose peace. But the massacre of New Dresden had ended that forever. And now, the Death Worlders would not stop. In the hidden chambers of the Galactic Council, panic grew. Some species begged for joint intervention, desperate to halt Earth's advance before the entire galactic order collapsed. Others advised silence, terrified that even speaking against the Death Worlders might draw their attention. The Council's power was broken. Their authority shattered the moment Earth walked out without a word. Back on Earth, the people watched in grim silence. There were no celebrations, no joy, just the quiet mourning of a species that had learned the hardest lesson. Sometimes, survival required doing the unthinkable. And once that line was crossed, there was no going back. Mara Hale stood once more at the observation deck of the Eclipse, her face lit by the distant glow of the shattered Sarlon station. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. Set course for the next target. Her officers obeyed. The Death Worlder fleet turned without pause. Their next objective was already waiting. Another Empire fortress, another piece of the machine that had slaughtered innocent lives. And so the march continued without rage, without cruelty, without doubt, because the time for mercy was over. And when Earth stopped talking, nothing in the galaxy could stand in their way. The Empire's fall was not a dramatic collapse, but a silent unraveling. Piece by piece, world by world, it broke apart under the cold advance of the Death Worlders. There were no victories shouted from rooftops, no heroic last stands. Only the soft, terrifying sound of precision strikes and the heavy silence that followed in their wake. The Death Worlder fleet moved without pause. One target fell, then another and another. Every military stronghold, every command nexus, every fleet rally point gone. No survivors among those responsible for the genocide. Civilians untouched, no cities bombed, only the Empire's war. Machine its teeth, its claws, systematically erased. Captain Mara Hale stood in the command center of the Eclipse, her eyes locked on the darkened holographic map of enemy space. The glowing red lights representing hostile forces were fading one by one, replaced by empty silence. Her officers, hardened soldiers every one of them, worked without emotion, without hesitation. They understood. This was not conquest. This was justice delivered with the cold precision of survival itself. The enemy empire's leadership had once been so sure of their strength, so confident in their ancient power. They had called Earth soft, weak, unfit for war.
But now they
saw what had always been hidden beneath the human surface. The quiet fury of a species born on a death world, a species that, once provoked beyond reason, would stop at nothing until the threat was gone. In distant corners of space, the last remnants of the Empire tried to flee. Some commanders disobeyed orders, abandoning their posts and seeking refuge. On neutral worlds, others, too terrified to move, sat frozen as the Death Worlders approached, knowing their fate was already sealed. None of it mattered. The black ships came anyway. And when they came, nothing was left standing. On the shattered remains of Velis Prime, an enemy general, once one of the architects of the New Dresden massacre, was dragged from his fortress by human strike teams. He begged, he wept, offered secrets, surrender, anything to be spared. But the humans said nothing. They didn't scream, they didn't curse. They simply took him. And when they left, the fortress burned. The galaxy watched in stunned horror. Broadcasts leaked, smuggled, desperate spread from system to system. Footage of black armored soldiers moving with terrifying silence. Images of precision strikes that left entire enemy fleets in ruin while civilian populations remained untouched. Species who had once viewed humans as strange and small now saw the truth. This was not a primitive people. This was a species that had mastered restraint until restraint no longer served them. And when restraint was abandoned, nothing could stand in their way. The Galactic Council, powerless and fractured, could do nothing but whisper in fear. Some begged Earth for talks, but no reply came. Some suggested military intervention, but no fleet dared move. Everyone knew to challenge Earth now was suicide. And so, one by one, the galaxy's powers turned their eyes away, too afraid to speak the words aloud. The old order was over. Mara Hale gave the next order without hesitation. Another target, another piece of the Empire's heart to be cut away. The officers responded without pause. Coordinates set. Engines engaged. The black ships moved again, and as the Death Worlder fleet advanced, the final strongholds of the Empire began to break from within. On Uran's station, loyalist admirals turned on each other, fighting not against Earth, but against their own terror. On Threxus IV, soldiers deserted en masse, abandoning weapons and uniforms as the panic consumed them. They knew. They all knew. The Empire was finished, and Earth hadn't even spoken a single word. Back on Earth, the people watched with heavy eyes. The images of New Dresden still burned into every mind, played on endless loops. There was no cheering. Number, pride. Only the quiet understanding that this was the cost of survival. The cost of allowing monsters to believe they could murder innocents without consequence. The Death Worlders had always been feared for the wrong reasons. Not because of their strength, not because of their weapons, but because when pushed truly, they would not fight for power. They would fight to end the threat completely. The Eclipse moved through the dark. Its engines a soft whisper against the endless black. Mara Hale, her hands folded behind her back, stared out into the stars, her voice barely audible. "We don't stop until it's done." Her officers nodded. They understood the enemy empire's last lights were fading, its power shattered. Leaders gone or hiding, galaxy trembled in the quiet left behind, and the Death Worlders marched on. The Galactic Council had never faced a threat like this. Its ancient halls, built from stone's mind on worlds older than memory, echoed now with hurried footsteps and whispered fears. The leaders of the galaxy's greatest powers gathered in secret chambers, their faces shadowed under heavy cloaks, their voices low and tense. For the first time in centuries, they were truly afraid. Not of war, not of defeat, but of humanity. The silence that followed Earth's walkout had been terrifying. No words, no threats. It's just cold, impenetrable silence. Then came the strikes. Surgical, ruthless, without mercy or mercy's pretense. The Deathworlder fleet moved like a ghost, erasing the Empire's power with terrifying speed. The Council's influence crumbled as fast as their fleets, and the galaxy began to unravel around them. Ambassadors argued bitterly. Some called for immediate military action. Others urged caution. The Council was split, fractured by fear and uncertainty. The old alliances trembled, and the once unshakable foundations of galactic peace cracked under the weight of an enemy no one understood. In the grand chamber where the Council met, the High Chancellor, a tall being with pale blue skin and glowing eyes, banged his staff on the marble floor. "We cannot allow Earth to continue this rampage. It will destroy the balance of power. It will throw us into chaos." His voice was strong, but carried the tremor of doubt. A younger delegate from the water planet Zarin spoke next. "We must negotiate. The humans have shown restraint. They target only those who committed the massacre. There is still time to stop this." But others were less hopeful. A warlord from the harsh desert world of Karos growled, "Restraint? They wiped out entire fleets without warning. If we do not act now, they will be at our doors." The Council was trapped between two fears: fear of humanity's unstoppable power and fear of their own failure to stop it. Every day brought new losses. The Empire's strongest worlds fell, their leaders captured or killed. Refugees flooded neutral systems. Council's reputations suffered, and their calls for peace sounded hollow. Meanwhile, on Earth, the government did not celebrate victory. Instead, they prepared for the next strike. The faces of the leaders showed no joy, only a heavy resolve. Captain Mara Hale met with her commanders beneath the Earth's surface. In a secure bunker lined with steel and holograms, "We have given the galaxy every chance," Mara said. Her voice was calm but firm. The Council begged for peace, but peace was never their true goal. They want to stop us from delivering justice. We cannot allow that. Our mission continues. Her officers nodded in agreement. They knew the cost. They understood the burden of being the galaxy's last line of defense against chaos. They also understood the price humanity had already paid, their colonies destroyed, their people murdered without mercy. Outside the bunker, the stars continued to burn cold and distant. The Deathworlder fleet was a slow, steady wave, sweeping through enemy space with ruthless efficiency. Planets fell in silence. Fleets vanished before they could fight. And still, the humans did not speak. They did not negotiate. They only moved forward. The galaxy was forced to watch, forced to wait, forced to fear. For the first time, the ancient powers understood that this war was unlike any other. This was not a conflict of conquest or greed. This was a war of survival, and humanity had decided to end the threat once and for all. And the Council, they could only pray that Earth's next step would not be their last. The Deathworlder fleet moved through space like a quiet storm, unstoppable and relentless. There was no noise, no shouting, no war cries, only the soft hum of engines and the cold, steady breath of a species that had reached the end of patience. The humans had shown restraint, but that restraint was not weakness. It was a promise. The moment mercy failed, they would unleash their true power. In the command room of the Eclipse, Captain Mara Hale stood with her hands behind her back, eyes sharp and steady. The holomap showed the next cluster of enemy systems. Last pockets of resistance still holding out. These were not great capitals or massive fleets. These were smaller, quieter worlds where the architects of the massacre had hidden, hoping to escape justice. But no one could hide from the Deathworlders. The orders were clear. No unnecessary destruction. No civilians harmed. Only those who had blood on their hands would feel the cold edge of Earth's justice. This was not a war of expansion or greed. It was a war to cleanse the galaxy of a terrible threat. The Black. Ships descended silently on one such world called Terra Prime. The planet's defenses were modest. Its people, mostly farmers and miners, unaware of the storm approaching. The Deathworlder fleet bypassed civilian cities, moving with precision to military bases and command centers. The strikes were quick, devastating, and surgical. On the surface, human strike teams moved like shadows, clad in armor that blended. With the planet's rocky terrain, they advanced without hesitation. Enemy soldiers tried to fight, but were overwhelmed by skill and technology far beyond their understanding. There was no cruelty, no torture, just swift final justice. Among the prisoners taken was a war commander who had led attacks on human colonies. He was brought before Mara Hale on the Eclipse, broken and defeated. He begged for mercy, spoke of alliances and promises, but Mara's face remained unreadable. "We gave you peace," she said quietly. "You chose death." Her officers watched in silence as she turned away. Across the galaxy, news spread of the Deathworlder's restraint. Some feared it, others respected it. Few dared oppose it.
How the humans?
Fought not out of hatred, but out of necessity, a cold. Final necessity that left no room for error or mercy for the guilty. The Galactic Council's powers were shrinking, their hope fading. They tried to send envoys, messages, even threats. But the humans answered only with silence and action. Mara knew the toll this war was taking on her people. The weight of every life lost, every world burned, pressed heavily on her shoulders. Yet she carried on, because the alternative was unthinkable. The galaxy would never forget this war, and humanity would never forget what had been taken from them. In the quiet moments between battles, Ra often stared out at the stars, wondering if peace would ever return. But she knew one thing. Clearly, humanity's true nature had been revealed. Not the one the galaxy feared, but the one the galaxy had never seen. The nature of survival. The war raged on, but cracks were beginning to show not on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of those who commanded it. Captain Mara Hale paced the dim corridors of the Eclipse, her thoughts heavy like the weight of the stars pressing against the ship's hull. The relentless march of the Deathworlder fleet had brought destruction to the Empire's forces. But it had also awakened questions quiet. Dangerous questions within her own crew. They had seen the aftermath of their strikes. Cities reduced. 2 silent ruins, families scattered or hidden, planets that would never be whole again. The enemy was not just a faceless force. These were beings with hopes, fears, and lives. Mara knew the mission was just, but at times, the line between justice and vengeance blurred dangerously. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Arik Vale, approached her quietly. His usually sharp eyes now carried a flicker of uncertainty. "Captain," he said softly, "how far do we go? How many worlds must fall before this ends?" Mara didn't answer immediately. The question was one she had asked herself more times than she could count. "As many as it takes," she finally replied, her voice steady but without passion. "We stop only when the threat is gone." But even as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her. The galaxy was watching. The Council's silence was no longer just fear. It was a warning. Somewhere in the shadows beyond their reach, a new force was rising, one that might challenge Earth's relentless advance. Reports had begun to trickle in from distant systems. Rebel groups, once small and disorganized, now coordinated and bold. Pirates and mercenaries took advantage of the chaos, attacking supply lines and communication hubs. Even some neutral worlds, terrified by Earth's power, started building defenses of their own. The Deathworlder fleet was strong, but it was stretched thin. Every victory came with a cost: shore sources, ships, lives. Mara could see it in the tired faces of her crew. They fought not for glory but for survival, and the endless war was beginning to wear on them. One night, as the Eclipse drifted through a quiet sector, Mara stood alone on the observation deck. The stars shimmered coldly, distant and indifferent. She thought of New Dresden, of the families lost and the innocent blood spilled. She thought of the council chambers, silent and powerless, and she wondered if the path they had chosen could ever lead to peace. Her comm panel beeped softly. It was a message from Earth Command, new orders to push deeper, to strike harder. The war was far from over. Mara swallowed the bitter truth. The galaxy had changed, so had humanity, and the shadow of doubt would follow them all the way. Darkness spread across the stars like a heavy curtain as the Death Worlder fleet reached the last stronghold of the Empire, a massive fortress planet known as Vargoth Prime. It was the heart of the Empire's power, their final hope to regroup and fight back. The planet's surface was scarred from countless battles, its skies filled with dense fleets and defense grids designed to repel any attack. But the humans did not flinch, did not hesitate. They came with the cold certainty of a force that had already decided the outcome. Captain Mara Hale stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, eyes fixed on the endless array of enemy ships that filled the void ahead. The air was thick with tension, but no one spoke. Every officer knew what was at stake. This was the last battle, the one that would decide not just the war, but the fate of countless worlds. There was no room for failure. The Death Worlder fleet moved forward, a dark wave crashing against the Empire's defenses. The first salvo was devastating. Energy beams tore through enemy shields, capital ships exploded in fiery bursts, and the sky above Vargoth Prime burned with the fury of war. The humans fought with quiet determination, each strike measured, each move calculated. On the planet's surface, human strike teams prepared for the final assault. Soldiers moved with grim purpose through the shadowed forests and ruined cities, aware that this battle was more than a fight, it was a reckoning. Enemy forces resisted fiercely, knowing this was their last chance to survive. But against the Death Worlders, even desperation was not enough. The fighting was brutal and close. Every step forward cost lives. Explosions shattered the silence of the ancient world, and the screams of the dying echoed in the hollow valleys. Yet through it all, the human soldiers pressed on, unyielding, their eyes reflecting a resolve that no enemy could break. In the command center of Vargoth Prime, the Empire's last leaders gathered, faces pale, voices trembling. They realized the war was lost. They sent one final message, a promise of surrender. But Earth's reply was silence. Captain Mara Hale received the message but said nothing. The war had reached its end. There was no mercy left to give. The Death Worlder fleet tightened its grip, cutting off every escape route, crushing every flicker of resistance. And then, in the quiet moments before the final blow, Mara looked out at the stars once more. The galaxy was watching, holding its breath. She thought of all that had been lost, the worlds destroyed, the innocent lives taken, the hope that had been shattered and rebuilt through fire and steel. This was not victory. It was survival, and humanity had survived. With a final order, the Death Worlders launched their decisive strike. The fortress fell, the Empire shattered. The war was over. As the black ships turned to leave the broken system, the silence was heavy. But filled with a strange peace, the galaxy had changed forever. A new era was beginning, one where Earth's fierce resolve was known and feared. Captain Mara Hale stood once again on the Eclipse's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, cold and distant. She did not celebrate. She did not smile. She only breathed deeply and whispered to herself, "It is done." But deep in her heart, she knew the truth. The war was over. The galaxy was safe for now. But the nature of humanity, its strength and its darkness, had been revealed. And the future was still unwritten.